There we go.
Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about American authoritarianism and many other things. It's Tuesday, February 18, 2025. And so the one I wanted to start with, which I thought was very good, is an article called The Path to American Authoritarianism from Foreign Affairs um, by Stephen Levitsky and Lucan Way. And it really is very good. It goes through the historical background of declines from democracy into authoritarianism, which is what we're rocketing into. And it explains what's going to happen. U.S. democracy will break down during the second Trump administration in the sense that it will cease to meet standard criteria for liberal democracy, full adult suffrage, free and fair elections, and broad protection of civil liberties. And certainly they're ending civil liberties at a amazing pace. So the breakdown will not give rise to a classic dictatorship in which elections are a sham and opposition is locked up, exiled, or killed. He will be constrained by independent judges, federalism, and the country's professionalized military. There will be elections in 2028, and Republicans could lose them. What lies ahead is not fascist or single-party dictatorship, but competitive authoritarianism, a system in which parties compete in elections, but the incumbent's abuse of power tilts the playing field. And that, I think, is the point. Um, I think the Republican Party is clearly trying to follow the fascist model of Viktor Orban, and the point is to use every dirty trick, even more than they used to rig elections, to push, giving themselves an advantage. So anyway, what's amazing is how rapidly all the media and everybody else is collapsing, um, and just handing over power to them. Uh, and so you now there's a few signs of resistance, but it's much weaker than last time. Like Eric Adams, um, the mayor of New York City, is completely corrupt and being investigated. And Trump said, okay, tell him that we'll release him from the charges if he agrees to do whatever we tell him about immigration. And then had a meeting where he made clear the quid pro quo, but ordered people not to take notes. And now 7 prosecutors resigned rather than obey this order. And in the previous Trump term, when they threatened him with a mass resignation of the Department of Justice if he put Kash Patel in a high position, he gave in, but this time he didn't give in. So he did, in fact, drop the charges, or he's attempting to drop charges against Eric Adams. However, the judge has to sign off on that, and the judge may refuse. And Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, can just kick Eric Adams out to deny Trump his reward for doing this. So that will not have the power to do corrupt things to please Trump. So, there's some degree of resistance in the structure of our government. But certainly amazing stuff is happening. Like PBS caved immediately, ended their DEI office and kicked out their DEI staff, which is surprising. One would have thought PBS enjoyed being an independent news source, but apparently they don't care at all about that. All they want is the government money. And NASA has made it so you have to hide your pride flags and all those things right away. Google Calendar has removed Black History Month and Pride and other cultural events. And the Department of Education has told everyone to end their support for transgender students. So they're all just capitulating as fast as they can. Gives me the impression that they all actually hated their DEI initiative and were just champing at the bit for an opportunity to fire all those people and end it. Sure seems like that. And then, of course, the RFK Jr., now in charge, promoting disease as much as possible in America. He wants to send people who he says are addicted to antidepressants to government wellness farms for years where they will raise organic food, which will cure all their problems based on no science whatever. Just like Kellogg. Remember Kellogg with his cornflakes? Cornflakes and no sex were going to cure all your problems.
Yeah, I read about Kellogg, or
Yeah.
learned about Kellogg. I think he had 60 kids.
I didn't know that, boy. He can put Elon Musk to shame. But
Yeah,
this is the same thing we've had for a long time. These quasi-religious health nuts that claim that if you just like had a vegetarian diet or organic diet or something, everything would be fine. Uh,
right. Yeah, exactly.
and the
Exactly.
fake medicine is growing like crazy. Montana House just passed out of committee a bill to ban mRNA vaccines. And I was pleased to see a study came out, the second in a row, showing that vaccines greatly decrease your chance of getting Alzheimer's. They found it for the cold vaccine and many others, and now they find it applies to the cold vaccine, the diphtheria vaccine, herpes vaccine, and the pneumonia vaccine, which makes me think, I wonder if it's really the vaccine or it's just that people that get vaccines also go to the doctor and take care of their health.
Yeah, there's the shingles vaccine for adults, which is
Yep.
adult chicken pox.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, I did too. And the belief is behind that the vaccine is more effective than if you had chicken pox. Is let me think, how the doctor phrases. If you had chicken pox as a child,
Hmm.
you're more likely to get chicken pox shingles as an adult
Yes.
than if you had the vaccine when you were a child.
Oh, well, the only vaccine I took was only intended for old people. They only
Right,
recommend it like
but
over
when
age
you
50 or 60.
yeah, but prior to our generation, there's a vaccine for chicken pox.
Oh, I don't think that
And
existed when I was young.
no, it didn't. And I know that it was popular to have chicken pox and measles parties. So if one of the kids in the neighborhood had chicken pox or measles, you'd send your kid over to go play with them so they would get it.
Now I'm hearing that measles is actually pretty serious and people go to the hospital pretty often.
Yes. Yeah. And if you watch the Bernie Sanders with RFK Jr. when they were discussing this, RFK Jr., it was really interesting to watch what happened, the exchange. And Bernie Sanders was talking to RFK Jr. and asked him about vaccines and vaccinations. And he said, "Oh, I'm all for it."
Yeah.
And Bernie came back and said, "Look, in Samoa, kids got measles and you had 80 kids die and a
Yeah.
couple hundred go to the hospital. And if you look on your website right now, it says you're an anti-vaxxer
Yeah.
and you don't promote vaccines." But he was saying, "Oh no,
Yeah.
my kids have vaccines."
Yeah.
So then when Sanders kind of hit him up with this, it was interesting that RFK Jr., what he didn't do was answer the question. Instead, he came back and said, "You're all on the take from the vaccine companies." And instead of answering the question, came back with an attack and a misdirection.
Well, there's a reason for that, which came out also in the hearings, which is that RFK Jr. actually makes money from lawsuits to stop vaccines.
Yes.
That's why he promotes this stuff, and that's why the Wall Street Journal just came out with an article telling RFK to knock off the anti-vax stuff, but they omitted the fact that he has a financial incentive to deny vaccines, so which is the real point. So it's
He has a children's defense fund. I'm not sure
yeah.
exactly what it
He's
is, what the
basically
name.
like one of these hired scientists to tell you that cigarettes are good for you and stuff. It is his business to lie about vaccines. That's how
No,
he
but
makes
he,
money.
yeah, but Sam, he's an attorney. He's not a doctor. He's not
Doesn't
been
matter.
trained as a doctor.
That's right, but he's considered to have some influence, probably because of his family name, and they pay him. He participates in lawsuits and get paid for promoting anti-vax stuff.
Yeah, he gets paid by this defense fund on the order of 500,000 a year.
Yeah. So he has to keep lying about vaccines, and he will because it's his money. And he'll, of course, lie like Supreme Court justices do. He lies when in the congressional approval hearings, claiming the opposite of what he'll do. And after the hearing's
Right.
over, then he goes back to doing whatever he wants. So, I mean, we're heading into a dark age of corrupt elections, incredibly corrupt government, and corrupt healthcare.
Yeah. 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 It's going to be interesting. And, he may single-handedly solve the housing problem.
Yeah,
I
well,
keep joking on
I,
that.
I saw James Carville saying what I've been thinking, which is Democrats should just tread water and do nothing and let the Republicans destroy themselves
Yeah.
because they do
Yeah.
seem to be doing to themselves. I think they've now fired 10% of the entire federal workforce, which mostly hits the red states. People are complaining, I voted for Trump, but now they took my job away and they're lying about people saying they're firing them for cause when there is no cause and firing the people they said they wouldn't fire. So it's pretty outrageous. Anyway,
Yeah, I
um,
would agree. I agree.
it's amazing, and I think it won't be very long before all these court orders actually stop most of this nonsense. But we'll see. I
Yeah,
know
we
I
will
just
see.
saw the park out here, not Yellowstone, but the big park near us, that famous park whose name I can't remember with the big mountains um, in California.
Yosemite? Oh,
Yosemite.
Yosemite.
Yosemite
Yeah,
just
yeah.
said there's a huge crisis because they fired everybody as part of Trump's nonsense. So there's nobody to like regulate the people going in there or make reservations or as far as park rangers or anything. They've all been fired. So the summer
Have you
the
have you
season is
verified that at all?
no,
Okay.
but I saw the article. They said there's going to be disaster because they've cut the staff and there's going to be a flood of visitors and there's not enough people to handle them, which I think is true of parks all over the nation
Yeah, yeah. So
because
what
they,
do? They close them.
well, that would probably be the thing to do at Yosemite because one thing about Yosemite is if too many people go in there, they damage it.
Right, right, right.
So they kind
Yeah,
of do need to regulate the people going in there. Anyway, um,
yeah.
that's enough of the politics, I suppose. What have you got?
Oh, let's see. What do I have? Well, you got one of them, which was that RFK Jr.'s been confirmed as
Yeah,
Health and Human Services Secretary.
yeah.
So Apple, this is interesting, is in the news that Apple will begin collecting health data and begin looking for patterns. Did you hear about that?
What, the Apple Watches or what?
I don't know. They just said they're going to start collecting it.
I don't understand how Apple knows any health data.
Well, they have the health app.
They do? Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What does it do? I don't have it.
So let's see. It keeps track of, it's like a Fitbit.
Okay. I mean, I have my Apple Watch has like a exercise option that keeps track
Yeah,
of how much
yeah,
you walk and stuff.
yeah.
It does have a bunch of other stuff like scheduling your day and clocks and everything to drive you nuts. I haven't turned any of that on.
Yeah, and I think it monitors how many steps you walk. It
Yeah, that's
monitors, blah blah blah.
okay. Yeah.
If you fall, it calls 911 or it asks you if you need 911 called.
I've had that happen. About a couple of years ago, I was on long walks in the heat and it got so upset about something it detected, it offered to call 911 for me.
Oh, that's interesting.
My heart rate was too high or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Apple is starting considering is probably the better word to use to collect health data and looking for patterns. And this is something that Kaiser has done for a number of years, at least 20 years.
Well, Kaiser has real useful data like diseases and
Right.
treatments and stuff. I think the Apple has such a limited amount of data, there's not much value in it, but maybe I'm wrong.
You know what I think it is? I think Apple is looking for another market. And they
Yeah.
tried self-driving cars. They bailed out of that. The AI stuff has
Yeah.
sort of been a failure, I
Yeah,
would argue.
this is what Scott Galloway has been saying for years. Apple is sitting on so much cash, they can't find anything to invest in that's big enough. He said the only thing they can possibly invest in that's going to be big enough is healthcare.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because
Yeah, okay.
they had more cash than the entire U.S. government at one point. They have billions of dollars just sitting there in cash because they can't figure out what to invest it in. Because they
Yeah,
and healthcare is one area they could move into. Although Amazon went in there first, so we'll see. But they were going to go into cars, and they finally figured out this is just never going to be any good, and they abandoned the cars.
yeah. It's interesting. Over the weekend, there were attacks in the holiday against Tesla. And I think there were probably 50 people protesting outside the Tesla showroom in San Francisco.
I imagine everywhere. I know a couple of weeks ago, a group in Europe projected like a video of Trump giving the Nazi salute, or I mean, of Elon giving the Nazi salute on the Tesla store. They made it look really good too. It says Nazi Tesla in the same font. So they made a good show of it.
It is interesting. An attorney brought that up. Can you project onto a building?
Yeah, because there's a guy, Ben Wittes, has been doing it to the Russian embassy all over the place, projecting
So in the
Ukrainian
United
flags and stuff.
States,
Yeah.
I'll ask you, Sam, do you know if it's legal or not?
I do not know if it's legal. I would imagine it might be covered by free speech, but I wonder if the courts have really made a decision yet.
Yeah, so it is interesting because you would think it would be free speech. However, the building is private property, so
Yeah,
it's
so you
not.
they could argue you're infringing on their private property. Now, if you were to
Right.
project it like on the sidewalk outside, I think there'd clearly be free speech. But projecting it on somebody else's building is perhaps something like graffiti or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah. 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 That's what the attorney said.
Yeah.
So anyway, you got another one for us?
Oh, yeah. So I got some InfoSec
Oh,
ones.
good.
So, we have China's Salt Typhoon hacked all the phone systems and hacked into
Right.
Microsoft emails, and the U.S. government freaked out and put sanctions on China and everything, and said, there, that'll stop them. And now the news has come out saying that didn't even slow them down. They're still hacking just as much as ever. Now they're taking over Cisco routers to get in. They found the web interface of Cisco's iOS, which I remember when I used to teach Cisco, they said, whatever you do, don't even use that web interface. It's useless. It doesn't work. Just use the command line. And apparently it's vulnerable in addition to not working very well. So they found two vulnerabilities, one that gives you initial access and one that gives root privileges. So the Recorded Future found more than 12,000 Cisco devices with web interfaces exposed online, and the hackers targeted more than 1,000 and then focused on a smaller subset that they exploited. Then they installed GRE tunnels for command and control centers and apparently malware or remote control malware inside the network. So they're still taking over stuff right and left. They're not slowed down at all by our sanctions and complaints.
Yeah. Good. Good. Huh?
Yeah, the Cold War between the U.S. and China continues, heating up gradually.
Yeah, that it does. So here's a new one. Data breaches at school. This is interesting. I don't know if you caught this headline,
No?
but data breaches are occurring at K through 12 schools, and we have hackers or cyber criminals that are doing ransomware. Is they break in and they're able to find student records, including student health records and behavioral records. And school officials have been silently paying those off.
Yeah, I've heard that. This has been what I've heard for years is that everybody always pays.
Yeah, so, but schools are paying and keeping this quiet.
Well, everybody tries to keep it quiet too. And I think there's not a legal requirement in America to admit when you pay. Some people would like to, but I don't think it's required. There's breach notification
So,
requirement to some extent, though.
yeah, there's no, it's my sources have said that there's no legal requirement for schools to admit data breaches of student records.
Wow. I would have
So,
thought to actually get
it,
the records, you'd be required to admit that, but I don't know.
yeah, so there have been over, the sources say, 100,000 student records that have been
Oh, yeah.
compromised or stolen. And again, these are K through 12, and it's information about students' health, their medications that they might be on. This is truly PII or PI
Yeah, yeah. I
information.
mean, and I think California's had a data breach law for years that you must inform California residents if you lose their data. Maybe it doesn't apply to school kids, but I thought it would.
The law states for businesses, but
Oh,
there's nothing about schools.
man. Well, that
Yeah.
probably should be.
Yeah, there should be. That's the
Yeah.
point. Yeah. What else you have going on?
Well, I've found an article referring to a way to set up your home lab, and I learned about Goad, Game of Active Directory. Do you know about this?
No, I don't.
It's a really good idea. When I do hacking challenges, I have like one Windows machine and one Linux machine, and you practice hacking the Windows machine. But what you really need to practice is hacking real Active Directory with like forests and cross forest trusts and all that jazz. And that's what this thing is. It's Game of Active Directory is a thing you can download that will simulate like a whole forest with like 6 or 7 servers and all the Active Directory set up, and with vulnerabilities you can practice attacking. So it's a really good idea, and you need like 35 gigs of RAM to run like 8 or 10 virtual machines. But um,
Oh, I see. I see.
but it's a whole thing you can set up, and then you can practice hacking, and there are walkthroughs and stuff available. So it sounds pretty good. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to get the hardware to set it up, but I'm looking into it. Um, it's a very good idea to have a proper corporate Active Directory set up to practice hacking into instead of the simple one machine demos that I've been using.
Yeah, got it, got it. So game of Active Directory.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a vulnerable test environment, but a much more realistic one than most hacking services have. Hack,
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a bunch of virtual machines.
yeah. Yeah, it is. All set up to
So
go. Yeah.
yeah, you need the RAM. You're
Right. You
right.
need and storage too, but
Yeah,
RAM is the main thing that
yeah, yeah,
yeah. But that makes sense. You would.
yeah. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
So did we talk about Spark Cat, secret stealing AI images
Oh, I don't.
discovered? It's an app that was discovered in the app and Play stores. Spark Cat,
Or,
secret stealing AI images scanner.
uh, oh, you mean it reads the images and does optical character recognition on them?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
my
I heard
understanding.
of one that would infect your phone and then steal the secrets from your like screenshots.
Yeah, I think we talked about that
Yeah.
maybe last time
Yeah.
about stealing
Yeah.
Bitcoin wallets
Wallet
and
phrases. Yeah.
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 So I think what's I can't remember if this is part of SparkCat, but you copy and paste your key, or maybe this is what you brought up last time. You put it in the paste buffer and then you paste it into whoever you're paying, and they're stealing out of your buffer,
Well, they might be
copy and
doing that,
paste
but you're
buffer.
also stealing it from images you make or screenshots.
Yeah, yeah. So a
So,
combination of that.
yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then AI fuzzing has successfully jailbreaks the most powerful chat GPT model.
Right. I've heard of
You're,
this automatic prompt injection.
you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's why people are trying to develop defenses against prompt injection. And so far, it's all pretty weak. Yeah.
yeah. What else you have? Any more?
Yeah, I was
I
pretty
have,
charmed by this one.
okay.
I've been actually teaching a real computer science course. Last time I taught one about the efficiency of algorithms. We were all talking about how they scale, order of n squared, and all that jazz. And so hash tables, I just covered them last semester. You know, hash tables are extremely common data structures. They are the oldest data structures we have, among the oldest ones, where you try to randomly store records in something so you can easily recover them by having a simple hash function that calculates from the key. And the point is, hash tables become very inefficient when they start getting full. And in the worst case, when you're filling in the very last open slot in a hash table, you have to hunt through the table to find an open spot, and therefore it will be order of n. It will scale linearly with the size of the table. And that has been a conjecture, never mathematically proven, and has been believed for 40 years. So a student called Andrew Krapivin, didn't know that it had been accepted that this was order of n, so he invented a new hashing algorithm that does it, and it's much, much faster. It's log of n squared instead.
Oh,
So he
huh.
found a smarter way to do it, a vast improvement. And this is one of those cute ideas that's real inspiring to beginners because he didn't actually know the established wisdom. He smashed it to bits. This is what you always want to hear when you're a student that you don't really have to like study everything and learn everything to contribute. Your fresh viewpoint might open up new doors that the old established people have overlooked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's
Huh.
inspiring for students. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So I've got one for you. AI images. You ready for this? Of the departed. So you can talk to them
Oh,
and
yeah.
have conversations.
Well, I've heard about this, like you pay to have an imitation at your funeral or something.
No, no, this is post funeral. So you can, if you're lonely, you feel like you want to talk to your departed, you can bring up an AI
Yeah.
image and have a conversation.
The modern version of a seance.
That's right, but it works.
Well, seances probably work about as well. But
Yeah,
I
but
think that would be creepy as hell. I wouldn't want like an AI version of my dead partner appearing on the screen. I don't know. I think that would be pretty twisted, but maybe it'll be popular.
yeah, I think you upload images and you upload recordings, and so it voice synthesizes.
Yeah, I'm not in any hurry to do that. Uh,
But you're
well,
right, it's zombie images.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm probably just old and stuck in my ways, right? I have this old
Yeah, right.
So, well, there's China. The Chinese EV companies are make the best EVs and the cheapest, and they're very popular, but they don't make much profit off them. So they're expanding into humanoid robots, and they have a ton of them. And they just showed them off for Chinese New Year. They had a big dance spectacular of human dancers mixed with robot dancers to show off how cool they are. And they're already using them in their EV factories, and they're planning to be a big source of humanoid robots for general purpose. So we'll see. A lot of people have tried this, and I think the only thing holding it back has been the high price, and I think China can totally address that.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
Kind of on a side, there was Chinese New Year's over the weekend, and they had their parade in downtown in Chinatown, San Francisco,
yeah,
and they had their fireworks display, and then there was to be a drone display. The drone display was canceled, and reason being is kind of unclear, but it was feared that the drones would go out of control and might injure somebody. That
yeah,
was one, and that's happened before.
yeah.
There's a drone that hit somebody in the head that we know of, we mentioned.
Hmm.
But the other mention is that they didn't get clearance from the FAA, but where it is in San Francisco, it's under there's a class airspace where if you're below a certain height or a certain altitude,
Right.
that it shouldn't apply, or it's easier to apply. The jets don't fly 1,000 feet over the city of San Francisco, is what I'm getting
Yeah,
at.
yeah. But in the LA fires a month ago, they really did hinder the anti-fire activities. Idiot throwing a drone up there that actually
Yeah,
broke one of the planes. So I imagine they're pretty sure about that right now.
yeah, and especially with the aircraft flight or the accident that happened in DC. And by the way, the NTSB announced that the helicopter pilot has altimeters, and they have two altimeters, and they're supposed to be calibrated, I believe, within 100 feet or 25 feet. But the two altimeters in the helicopter, their settings were off, so that there was a disagreement of 100 feet between the two altimeters in the cockpit.
No, that's not good.
So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. It sure looks like this is a helicopter pilot issue, piloting issue, because they did claim 18 seconds before they hit that they had the aircraft in sight, but obviously it was the wrong one. And
Yeah.
it turns out we now have the flight data recorder from the American Airlines flight, and it turns out that they must have seen the helicopter and pulled up, but by that time it was too late. The plane wouldn't respond.
Well, there was another crash yesterday, and it's like the fifth crash in a month, which is crazy. I mean, I
Yeah.
heard some people saying it's Trump causing the crashes, and I said he couldn't have made this much trouble already. But they did offer to fire all the FAA people, and a bunch of them did quit when they got the email. So maybe he actually has already crippled the aircraft safety protocols. I don't know. I'm sure there'll be investigation, and in a couple of years we'll have some kind of answers, unless they have canceled the NTSB, which certainly it's got to be on Doge's radar to cancel them like every other government agency.
Yeah, so it's interesting about the NTSB is they've made over 100 recommendations. The FAA has not implemented. Now, to be fair, we don't know if there's something as simple as a procedural change,
Yeah.
or if it's to implement a new radar system that would be quite costly.
Reminds me of cybersecurity. After every data breach, the instant responder will often make recommendations. And I read many articles about how they told you this, like Target, I think. They told you like 2 years ago to fix all this stuff, and you didn't fix it, and then you got hacked.
Yeah. So in aviation, in business, they use something called the Swiss cheese model. And the Swiss cheese model is every slice of cheese is a barrier. And if all the holes in all the slices of Swiss cheese line up,
Right.
then you can have something. But if one slice block that vector or that line going through all the Swiss cheese, then the accident wouldn't have occurred.
Yeah, there's what we
And
call like compensating controls and defense in depth. Yeah.
yep, yep. So the gentleman that created that around 2000 just passed away, interestingly
Yeah.
enough. It's
Yeah.
called the Swiss cheese model.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's more or less what we do. I don't know if we are proud of it and give it a name, but anyway. Yeah. Uh,
Well, that's what aviation uses. I've heard it used in business as well.
yeah.
All right, yeah,
Yeah.
I got one more. You got one more?
I got one more, which
Okay,
is
you go first.
Bruce Schneier has written an
Yes.
article about Doge, saying, they're totally violating all security protocols. This is horrible. Which is like anybody conventional information security says, you don't take
Yeah.
sensitive government data and let just random idiots and led by a lunatic on ketamine in there. You have to have them cleared. You have to have auditing. You have to have oversight. You have to record what they're doing. And they're not doing any of that. They're just letting Musk and his team of bigoted 19-year-olds just charge in and mess with everything and shut things down without even understanding what they're doing. And,
So
they're here. Yeah.
Sam, do you know what criteria Elon used for those people?
Well, he knew them, I think. They worked on SpaceX and stuff.
Ah, I see.
And
Okay.
they're they are appalling people. Like one of them was actually fired from his previous job for deliberately leaking the company secrets to a competitor. And several of them are openly racist, and so is Musk, is an open Nazi. And there's he moves on the Silicon Valley principle of move fast and break things, just like Twitter.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
doesn't care if he makes mistakes. And they say, if you don't know what anything is, let's just shut everything down and then see who complains. And then we'll find out what little we have to turn back on. So they're just shutting off medical research, healthcare payments for people, food for people who are dependent on that food and all that jazz. Just turn it all off because he thinks, like most rich people down through history, he thinks the government shouldn't really provide any services to anybody. Poor people, it's their own fault that they're poor. Just let them
Yeah.
die,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
certainly the Republican position on everything, is poor people should just be cheerfully ground under the feet of their superiors who will just exploit them. And they should stop complaining about that. What's incredible is poor people support the Republican Party that is absolutely for the oligarchs crushing them, but I guess they are easily fooled by propaganda. Anyway, and there's lots of examples like the Doge website posted classified information after promising they wouldn't. And Doge website was formed from an insecure database, so they defaced it several times, showing that they don't even put controls on their own website. So these are the people we're trusting with direct access to everything. And they're barging. I think the Social Security Agency had just quit because they demanded access to the Social Security data. So they're going after, their plan is to do what Republicans have wanted to do for my whole life, which is end the social safety net in order to have more money to give to the rich.
Yeah. Yeah. So, interestingly enough, there's a movie, the Apprentice movie, which is about Trump. I don't know if you've heard of that or seen
I've
that.
heard of it. I haven't seen it, but people say it's good.
Yeah. So Trump immediately called it trash and is suing for defamation.
Well, that probably means it's good.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So NPR's Terry Gross had an interview with the actor that played Trump, and it was pretty interesting what he talked about. He said he went back and looked at Trump and back when he was in his 20s, working for his dad,
Yeah.
and how he was negotiating a deal with the mayor, Mayor Como, was it of New York, and
It
he
looks like
wanted,
he's coming back, by the way.
is he?
Yeah, because they need to get rid of Adams, and they're talking about putting Como back.
So, so the little clip that they played was Trump having an argument with Como, and Como saying, "Look, we're not going to give you a tax break for your, luxury apartment building." And so Trump left with a kind of saying, "You'll regret this," or, "I'll take care of you."
You know, the villain in Back to the Future, Biff, is based on Trump. Anyway,
And
he's been
where'd you come up
everybody.
with that?
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it several times. You know, I think he's been a notorious New York character for decades before he ran for president. Most people in
Oh,
New York
yeah,
just saw
yeah,
him as like a tabloid clown constantly. What stupid thing did Trump do now? You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, he wrote his autobiography. I don't know, was it autobiography, the Art of the Deal?
right.
I'm sure that was ghost written.
It was. All his ghostwriters come out and talked about how yeah, he's an anti-Trumper. The guy he paid to write that. He is not impressed with Trump.
So is it, do you know anything about the book? Is it real or is it?
Well, I mean, uh, it's a ghost written, but it does represent Trump's idea of dealing. That's his big thing. This technique of constantly lying all the time is apparently openly explained in the book. I have a friend who read it. I didn't read it.
Ah,
They said
okay,
he tells
okay.
you just always tell people what they want to hear to keep the deal alive. Don't worry about whether it's true or not. You can always contradict it later. The important thing is to never let anybody walk away feeling like the deal is over. Always keep them on the hook.
Yeah, so that's kind of what was implied in the Terry Gross interview,
Yeah,
that Trump was kind of awkward in his 20s, but he learned how to refine his skills, telling people what they want to hear
right,
and redirecting and not answering questions directly,
right.
but kind of, what he's mastered. And I think he's doing a very good job at that.
Sure.
And I'm sure he polished that while he was on TV doing The Apprentice.
Yeah, he's like a mob boss. He doesn't
Yeah,
actually say anything. He just sort of makes suggestions so you can sort of read into it whatever you want to see.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And that's to a degree, that's what some lawyers do, and RFK Jr. is doing that.
And preachers. This is
And yeah,
yeah. This is how you get a crowd behind you is make them all hear what they want to hear.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm with you, Sam.
Yep, yep. Well,
I'm with you.
it's exciting times we're living through.
Yeah, so I'm just doing a little look. I did a little fact check. The National Park Service,
Yeah,
about 3,400 recently hired employees with
right.
the Forest Service, and
Yeah.
1,000 employees with the National Park Service were fired from their jobs over the weekend.
Yeah, and what they said was they were supposed to exempt people who were seasonal hires to deal with the rush, which is what's going on at Yosemite, but they didn't. And this is true of a lot of things. Like when people went to protest before Congress saying you cut these important jobs, the Republican leader said scornfully, "You don't understand. We made an exception for that." They claim to have made exceptions, and then they didn't make exceptions. They just fire people anyway. So they
Yeah,
just lie about
okay.
what they're doing. So this way you have to look at what they really did as opposed to what they say they're doing.
Yeah,
But of course,
yeah.
to be fair, they might be trying to make the exceptions because the way they're doing this is the way Trump does everything, the way he did the Muslim ban. They're just rushing ahead, issuing orders. A bunch of people are doing things like, they fired the nuclear pe people making safety of our nuclear weapons. And then they realized, wait, we shouldn't have fired them. We want them back. But the way they fire people is they send you an email. And when you are detected to have opened the email, they immediately cancel your account. So you can't log in, get email, any more email or anything. So they can't reach those people to bring them back. They don't have their current address. They've lost contact with their email. And this is a crazy procedure. I teach classes. This is not what you do. When you're letting somebody go, you arrange an exit interview. They come in, you talk to them, you explain to them the legal responsibilities, you make sure to recollect all company equipment. Then there's a period of time. They just ignore all process and just do
No,
everything
Sam,
like it's
Sam,
an emergency.
every place I've worked at, if they're going to terminate you,
Yeah.
they terminate your computer access and then let you know.
Well, yeah, but you don't terminate it, so you can't turn it back on. That's why you have like a suspend option. Because your next person wants to usually take over that account and they'll want to see all the documents and emails and everything to pick up where they left off. That's why you don't delete the account.
No,
You
no,
just
you don't delete
you
the
just freeze,
account.
yeah, you do freeze their access,
Yeah,
but then you can
yeah,
easily turn it back on.
yes,
But they
yes.
can't do that in this case. So apparently they're just deleting them, which would be
Oh,
consistent with everything they're doing. They're acting like there's no process, there's no rollback plan, there's no way to undo anything. Like remember, when Elon Musk did it at Twitter, he sent an email saying, "Okay, you're fired unless you reply to this within 24 hours." Agreeing to
yeah.
these things. And at least now in the government, they made it the other way. If you reply, then you've accepted our generous severance offer.
All
Anyway,
right, Sam. Let's we
yeah,
regroup on Friday here.
yeah. We'll be back on Friday. I think that's it for this one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.